And we are live. What's up, YouTube? Smash that like button. Just kidding. I mean, you can. I hear that the YouTube algorithm really rewards videos that get lots of likes in the first like 30 seconds or whatever. So anyway, I don't really care about the YouTube algorithm. So let me just get a couple things up and rolling so we can get started on office hours. Boom, there we go. And let me share my screen. For those of you who are new here, welcome. We're happy to have you. We are doing office hours where it's your opportunity to ask me questions each week. And yeah, it's a good time. We have fun and I do my best to answer questions and not make a fool of myself. So yeah, basically I focus on people who are in the Zoom call. And then for anybody who, or when we run out of questions in the Zoom call, which we often do, that like is such the thumbnail. Look at that. Then we go to the questions that are in the Discord, and we have just one. So this might be a very short office hours, unless there are questions in the Zoom. So take it away, Zoom. Anybody have a question in the Zoom call?
I actually had a question.
What's up?
How do you decide what project you want to work on next?
Ooh, man, I have a list, not really written down, but like just in my head of all of the things that I want to do. And yeah, trying to decide what to work on next. Like this summer or like spring, I was having a really hard time deciding which I wanted to do next. And what I was doing was trying to do all of them and not getting any of them done.
Yeah.
And so like I would, for a few hours, I'd work on revamping the Epic React workshops to do TypeScript. And then I would look at some testing JavaScript stuff. And then I like did a little bit for the Epic React store. And then I was also working on my website and thinking about like new workshops and new Egghead courses. And I was just all over the place of all these different things I wanted to do. And then finally I was like, you know what, I'm just going to focus on one thing, and that's going to be my website. And so I even stopped doing blogs every week. I haven't blogged in like 3 months, which is very unusual. I always blog for like the last 3 or 4 years. I've written a blog every week. Yeah, so anyway, that doesn't exactly answer your question. So like, how did I decide? It was, I guess, for me, it was what I wanted to do the most and what was going to make the biggest impact on the other things. So like the critical dependency, I guess you could say, because I have a, so with like the big thing I want to do is update Epic React and testing JavaScript. But to be able to do that, I need, because they're all going to be TypeScript, I need to have a TypeScript workshop that people can go through if they aren't familiar with TypeScript yet. And to be able to do that, I need to be like really familiar with teaching TypeScript and familiar with all of the features that I'm going to use in the Epic React and testing JavaScript workshops. And so to be able to know that, I have to update the material to know what features of TypeScript I end up using. But then in like the other side of all of this is I don't like teaching stuff that I don't have a lot of experience in. Contrary to popular belief, I didn't just start using TypeScript like 6 months ago. I've been using TypeScript for years. I just never used it for my teaching before. But still, I wanted to have like I have more experience with TypeScript and the features that I'm going to be using. And so I decided, you know what, like in preparation for the TypeScript course and upgrading all the TypeScript stuff. And in addition, I also wanted to get off of Create React App for all of my stuff because I was playing around with Remix and like, wow, this is the thing. So I wanted to spend some time actually building something real so that I had like real experience with Remix and TypeScript. And so that's why I decided, okay, let's do the website first. That'll give me all the experience that I want. and then we can get into updating the material, get that all fixed up. Then I know what features of TypeScript I'm going to need to teach people, and then we'll make the TypeScript course, and then work on updating all of the other stuff. So, and as part of doing the website, I also now know that I'm going to be making 2 or 3, maybe 4 remix workshops that will be part of the big update, the next big update that I do. So, yeah, so I guess that's a long answer to your question. The short answer is, do I identify the critical dependency, and if they have no dependencies and it's just like, yeah, they're totally unrelated with each other, then just choose the one that you're more excited about, I guess.
I was just curious. I wasn't like looking for like life advice or
Oh.
anything. I was just
Well,
but
that's how
yeah,
I
it's
decided.
cool. It's cool to have some insight into that though.
Yeah, yeah. I know lots of people, especially like when we're talking about educators and like, what do you work on? And so I've seen, and I've actually done this before, like educators will post this poll on Twitter, like, what do you want to learn next? And they, a couple of ideas. I've done that before. I never really let it sway what I end up doing, but I do kind of think it's interesting to ask. But for me, I just rely on the fact that the stuff I'm super jazzed about, other people will be jazzed about it too. And so I just focus on what I want to do and assume that people will also be interested in learning about it. And so far that's worked out really well. But yeah, so I pretty much focus on the stuff that I'm interested and excited about, and do the thing that sparks the most joy. So
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah, fun stuff. All right, Tom, I believe you're in here. I saw your chat in Zoom, and you moved it over here. So thank you for that. I'll answer your question here next. Okay, is it okay to partially apply a React hook, have a custom hook that takes 4 args? 2 of them already exist in the parent component. I'd rather not pass them down as props, just to be used in a hook. I'd prefer something like this. Then in the parent component, we just do that and then pass a created hook. Yeah, okay. So this one's a little tricky, mostly because, well, let's see. Yeah, so the reason that it's tricky is, like, if it's just a matter of passing arguments like this, then you won't run into this problem. But if you have a little bit more logic inside of each of these individual functions, that like says, oh, well, they passed these props, so instead we're going to use this other hook or something, then that breaks the rules of hooks, because you've got, you're calling different hooks potentially. And it could lead to, and if it doesn't, if you end up calling, you just happen to call use state in both of these or something, and then you could, you might not technically break the rules of hooks, but you'll have very difficult to debug bugs, where you're like, well, I have a use state over here and a use state over here. They track completely different elements of state, and now we're switching between the two, and now it's really confusing. And that's kind of the other thing too, is like, this is kind of unusual, so it'll be kind of confusing for other people. So yeah, let's see. So then pass the created custom hook. So yeah, passing a custom hook as props to a child, that's also pretty unusual, to pass a hook as props to a child. I feel like I've seen it done before. I've never done it myself. Yeah, let's see. I mean, one option is, without saying the actual use case that you have, it's kind of hard for me to give you good solid advice. But one option is potentially using context, so that those values are implicit. So now you're not passing props, but you have a hook that depends on the context that's provided by the parent. And I have done this before. I do it in my website. It's like my context, like the, yeah, what is effective? Yeah, there it is. It's right there. It's the last one I updated. Yeah, just my regular mechanism for having a context provider and then a hook that will get access to that provider. Just for the fun of it, check this out. I have this little utility called create simple context in my website that makes it so I can have, let's see, yeah, here's a user info provider. So I call create simple context. I say what the type of the value for that context will be, which for me is just the resolved return type of get user info, which is going to be just the user's avatar, ConvertKit info, and Discord information. So that's the type of the context value. Here's the name of it just for debugging purposes. And then I get the provider, a use value, and use optional value. So use value is going to throw an error if there's no value there. So that's useful on like a page where the user is required. You can't get on this page if you don't have a user. So I can just say use value, or in this case, I alias it to use user info. And then I don't have to do null checks or anything. And then use optional user info will is, yeah, what it says, but it means that I have to do null checks and stuff. So anyway, you could do something like this where you put those values inside of a context, and then it just expose a hook that uses those contexts, and then it takes the additional arguments. That would be more usual. See, and yeah, maybe a little bit more boilerplate though. So I can see why that might not be totally appealing, but in some situations it might be useful. If I were in your situation and I'm like, you know what, the provider is just like too much. I just don't want to pass the props. Then I would probably just suck it up and pass the props rather than try to do something like this. There's technically nothing wrong with it, probably, but it's pretty unusual. So yeah, anyway, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just a quick, I mean, the reason that I did this on the project I was working on was because I had a bunch of components that were being used and they needed to be backwards compatible with some old code and some other part of the code base. So I was passing in this custom hook that has exactly the same API as useState. And then in the props to the child component, it had, the prop was called use custom hook or whatever, and the default value of that prop was a useState. So then I was passing in this alternative hook, which basically was just doing useState under the hood, but it was also, it had an effect in it that was updating a context with the value of that state. And then the reason that I was trying to generate them this way is because I was actually generating them as part of a map function over an array in the parent component. So I had to like create a custom hook with those two args baked in for each different thing in that list. Those two args could be different. So
sounds complicated.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't have been my first choice, but it was just in an effort to try and keep those components backwards compatible with other things without having to rewrite them all and then touch like thousands of parts of the code base. So the reason I asked the question was because if I tried to do this like I've described in there, then ESLint does not complain. If I try to put that second function into a use callback so that it's the same referential equality between renders, then ESLint complains and says you can't use hooks in a callback. And I was just getting a little bit confused trying to work out whether what I was doing was okay. But I think like logically I can't see, because it's always going to be called in the same way at the same time in the same order and everything, the way that I've done it here.
Yeah, you mean that you were getting an ESLint warning on the default to a use state? Is that what you mean? Or
no, I was trying in the parent component, I was doing this apply args to hook thing to generate this custom hook for each
and
each
it was
child
telling
component.
you can't do this.
I was trying to put the result of that in a callback so that it wouldn't be different between each render. And then I could memorize the child component because they were quite expensive components to render.
I see.
But ESLint didn't like that, so that's why because ESLint was complaining about it, I got myself in knots thinking about, is this really okay? Am I about to do something that's going to cause really hard to debug problems, or?
Yeah, it definitely could, especially if I mean it's probably okay if this ends up being a pure function, like yeah, let's see. Yeah, like if your React use callback dependency array is an empty array, because there are no dependencies, not because you just made it an empty array, but like there are no dependencies, then you'll be fine. But and you can safely ignore the rule. Let me say that
the
differently.
dependencies would only be arg1 and arg2 there. So like the use callback would be, I would be putting that second returned function into, that would be the callback function, and the dependencies with that function would have to change every time arg1 or arg2 changed.
Yeah. So and could arg1 and 2 change? Like, can they
actually technically no, they wouldn't change between renders in the particular use case that I'm using it for.
Yeah, so this is where things get a little bit tricky. Is today they don't change, but if you go ahead and move forward and you ignore the isLint rule, and then somebody comes around later and that makes it so that they do change, then you're going to have a very difficult to debug problem that people won't notice until they're like, oh yeah, this lint rule is disabled and that's causing us problems. So yeah, I would put a little effort into seeing if you can make a backward incompatible change, so that you don't have to do this sort of thing, because there are, yeah, a number of ways where this could lead to a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, sure thing. Okay, let me come back up here. Brody asked about good resources for learning React testing library. Ashley, thank you for posting testing JavaScript. That is the best resource that I have for anybody. But this person is asking for free resources. And so I will add, in addition to what Ashley said, actually it's topics, testing JavaScript right here. Yeah, testing javascript.com. Here, let's add the HTTPS, make that a real link, is the best resource, but it's not free. So you can find all the material here. It's not quite as useful as the material for Epic React, because Epic React material is like workshops and they have exercises and it's all spelled out really nice for you to just go through it yourself. Whereas testing JavaScript material is more like you watch me do this and then you apply it to your own stuff. There aren't really exercises, with the notable exception of the testing node apps, which is a workshop and does have instructions and stuff and exercises and whatnot. So yeah, other than that, like the rest of these are not quite as yeah, it's more like go look at that as an example. That could be helpful. So yeah, good luck, Brody. All right, Salem asks, hey Kent, does your testing JavaScript course cover TypeScript? It does cover TypeScript. Since we're here, I can show you. We have a couple TS files. We've got our TS config and we have a TypeScript example. This is about the extent of it though, right here. So it's mostly, let me show you how to configure TypeScript and let me show you why it's so great. And then that's it. So in a upcoming version of testing content that I plan to produce, I will do everything on TypeScript. But right now, testing JavaScript is only, it's exclusively JavaScript, with the exception of static testing is important. TypeScript is how you do that. And so go learn and use TypeScript, but then the rest of it is just in JavaScript, just because at the time I wasn't convinced that teaching in TypeScript was beneficial to the learners. And still, for some people, they may not like it, but I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm sorry, but if you're not writing in TypeScript, I can't take you seriously. Just kidding. But TypeScript is so good. You've got to use TypeScript. Anyway, so that's coming eventually. Oh, sweet. I'm glad you like it, Tom. Thanks. Okay, we've got some opinions coming in here about TypeScript, or maybe actually some questions too. So we'll just wait on that. It's only 9:53 my time. I go to 10:30, so I am yeah, happy to sit here for a little while to wait for questions to come in. Any other questions from folks in Zoom? Okay, I'll just wait for these typings to be done. Yeah, that actually sounds right, Tom. That it's ESLint is not smart enough, but at least the rule is smart enough to be able to tell you when it's not smart enough, which I think is good.
Hey, Kent, I actually do have a quick question.
Yeah. Is it Renee? Is that how
yes,
I say your name? Yeah.
100%. Speaking of TypeScript, I was noticing a lot of await return type thing like in your code. I've just never seen that before. I think return type is a TypeScript utility, but await, I don't think it is.
Well, we just happen to have the creator of this amazing type, and that's Darius over here. Maple Leaf.
Oh, cool.
Created this for me one day in Discord during a live stream. I was trying to, basically what this does is, so this get user info, it returns a promise that resolves to this user info. And so if I just do a return type of that, then that's going to give me back a promise that resolves to user info. But what I want is the user info. And so I just use this await utility that Darius wrote. And what I like sort of get what it does. So it's a generic, so it takes this type and we say, if the type extends a promise, and we infer the value of whatever that promise resolves to, I guess, the generic value of this. I don't know what you call that. In a function, that'd be an argument, I guess, infer what the argument is. So if it's a promise, then we'll dive in a level deeper. Otherwise, it'll be the type. And so then we're inferring the value that this promise resolves to. And assigning that to a value, I guess. So we'll just call that value, and now we'll await that value. And so if that promise actually is wrapped inside of another promise, and we'll just keep going until it's gone.
Gotcha.
Sorry, I'm getting a phone call from a number I don't recognize. Actually, I do recognize it. It's the guy who did my gutters, I think. And yeah, he hasn't asked me to pay him yet. And I'm not sure if he's done. So he's probably like, hey, yo, let's get paid. I'm happy to pay him, but he needs to tell me whether he's done because I'm not sure. Anyway, yeah, so anyway, it's just a way to say, here's a promise. Let me grab that type out of it.
Gotcha. So yeah, do you wind up using it for functions that you might not know if it's a promise, or do you only ever use it?
It's pretty much only when it's a promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it for me, I really don't like creating types unnecessarily. So this is one example where I actually do create a type and I for stuff, but let me see if I can find another. Oh, you know what? Yeah, blog server. So I have this get blog recommendations function. And I just, in here, I think I just return an array of string or MDX list items is what I'm returning. Maybe this one is not a good example. Yeah, I probably could just say array of MDX list items, but let's just imagine for a second that I'm just returning some objects or I maybe get episodes might be, no, that's also not good because I have a type defined for those two. But anyway, let's just pretend I haven't actually defined the type. Let's, you know what, let's not pretend. Let's make a real function here. It's like get Cody Steph. And now I'm going to return an object that has like thing, whatever, and other thing and true or whatever. So I could easily turn this into a type and extract it, make it a type value or whatever. and then say this returns a promise that, you know, I could type all that stuff out. And so that I can then reuse it in my loader data and say like Cody stuff is that Cody stuff type, right? I could do that. Or I could just say, await return type of get Cody stuff. And now I don't have to worry about, like, if I decide, hey, I want to do other stuff is whatever. If I had everything typed out, now I have to go and update the types as well as update this. Whereas with this, I don't have to do anything. Now, all of a sudden, this Cody stuff has that other stuff on it, just magically. I don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
So that's when I use this await return type stuff. It's just so I don't have to type as much. I very rarely ever have my functions return type specified, because like so long as I am actually like typing everything, which of course I am, I can rely on as much inference as I want, because I am going to get an error. And yeah, maybe that error will be a little far removed from where the change actually needs to happen. This is the argument that everybody always makes about that. It's like, well, but then because if you type it and you say, oh, this returns a promise that has a thing, a string, and an other stuff, it's a string and an other thing as a Boolean. So if you put it right there and then you neglect to do it, then the error shows up right where the change needs to happen. So that's the benefit of typing more and relying less on inference.
Gotcha.
But I don't know, like I like being able to just update the thing that I'm returning and not have to worry about
does it
keeping things in sync.
Not necessarily break down, but are there shortcomings? Like this works really well because it's like a function you created, you're in charge of the return value. So yeah, when you change the return, obviously it infers it. For like an API call, would this be way less useful because you don't know the return from the API unless you specifically type it?
Yeah, so like API calls, I mean, if it's a third-party library that you're using, and that's fully typed, then they should hopefully tell you everything. Yeah, and actually, let me see if I've got. Oh no, this is let's see, GitHub server. Here we go. Yeah, let's see. I feel like there's one of these. Yeah, so some of these I do end up typing myself, just because these API calls don't always, like they're extremely overloaded on the things that they can return, and so I'm casting and then I do my own little checking to make sure that things are correct. And this one cracks me up. So the data encoding is just a string, but when it buffer from accepts a specific a encoding value. So it is a string, but it's a specific set of strings. And so I cast the data encoding as whatever the parameters of buffer from that second argument is. So I just say, whatever that is, that's what this is. It works.
I like the comment.
Yeah, with the LOL. Yeah, I do that twice. I mean, what would probably be better is to find out, okay, what is this buffer encoding thing really? And iterate through that and say, make sure that it's not one of those things, and then throw an error. I should probably do that. Throw a helpful error if it's not one of those things, but yeah. It'll probably throw an error, and hopefully it's sort of helpful if it's wrong anyway. So yeah, like third-party stuff, if it's just like you're hitting an endpoint, I've got lots of those too. So here I've got fetch transistor. I made a little utility function so I don't have to worry about setting the API key and stuff, and I just accept whatever the JSON response should be. So all of these are going to be JSON. And so I take care of the JSON here, and then I just cast it, which doesn't do me a whole lot of good because I could just do the casting right there. Right. But at least I like to limit the number of castings that I do. And so I take the generic. And so that's what I do when I'm working with like hitting fetch requests, where I literally, there's no type safety across that boundary. You have to cast at some point. So that's what I do is I put my casting in one place. I cast it aside and then so that the rest of my code doesn't have to do that as much.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? I feel like I was beating around the bush a lot.
Nope, that's everything.
Cool.
Wrapped up in a nice little bow.
Yeah. I feel like there was one other. Yeah. So here's one other interesting case that I was just working on today. And that is I have a ref that is the latest. It's basically the latest version of a callback function. And that callback function comes from this utility called visualize. So this returns this draw function. And I didn't want to have to worry about, so here's the return there. I didn't want to have to worry about whether like maybe I change this draw function's, its return value or something. And so rather than just saying, oh, this draw ref is a function that returns void or something like that, and then having to update it later if I change what that draw function actually does return, I just say it's the return type of whatever visualize returns, or whatever type visualize is. And so, yeah, like really similar thing. It's like, I'm going to be assigning this draw ref to whatever visualize returns. So when we go to draw ref current, I actually really prefer doing it this way, because this communicates to me that this draw ref is assigned to the return value of visualize, of a call to visualize. So I would prefer doing this over creating a type value for it and reusing it, just because this, I feel like, communicates things more clearly. So it's also, maybe it's just lazy, but yeah. Anyway,
no, that makes sense.
Cool. All right, let's see.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts here? Oh yeah, Peter said, ready check for TypeScript teaching. What's your first intuition about const x is a record string of any? I'm assuming, Peter, you meant to do an equal sign there. Equals 0 and 1. I'm not sure what you mean, Peter, by my first intuition on this. Yeah, okay, so it is equals.
Yeah, do you think it will work?
Oh, will it work? Ooh, well, so the object is going to cast this to a string. So if we do this in the console, like var x equals 0, 1. Now x at 0 is 1. Interestingly, x at 0 is 1 too. Because when you do a property access like that, I think it will stringify this for us. Pretty sure that's what happens. So I think that will work. Will that work?
Yeah, it will work. What about the other way? Like if it's a record of number?
Yeah, I don't think that
would
work.
Put the 0 on the quotes. Yeah.
Yeah. Does that doesn't work?
And no, it doesn't work the other way. But like, do you have any like explanation why one way works and the other way doesn't work?
I think it's because yeah, I think it's just because records can't have string or have numbers as properties. They only have strings.
No, they can have numbers as keys. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the like under the hood, when you try to access.
Oh, in JavaScript. Okay.
Yeah, in JavaScript. Yeah. Wait, so are you saying in TypeScript you can actually have a record with a number?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
How would you represent that as like an actual value, I wonder?
The keys must be numbers. So if you put the 0 in quotes in JavaScript, it will work even if without a type. But in
so wait.
it will complain. Yeah,
I thought you said that this wouldn't work if you change string to number.
And then if you change the 0 to string 0.
Okay. So the combination of the two. I see. So a number. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. Cool. That makes sense.
So yeah, this one works, but if you put the 0 in quotes, it suddenly stops working. Even in JavaScript, it's the same. Oh, what? No, it doesn't stop. Oh, it doesn't complain.
Well, I wonder if I go hello. That's interesting. Maybe this is like a fix that they made or something in some version. Let's see if we go.
Yeah, it's probably for the literal, it can tell that 0 in quotes is okay. Yeah, I actually in real life I had the type string, not literal 0. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, you could go back to that code and see if it'll work now.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Vile or VA or Violi, I'm sorry, you can correct me if I tell me if one of those was right. Okay, how about adding TypeScript? Oh yeah, use safe dispatch. I think I actually have that somewhere. Let's see. I first introduced that in, I think, Advanced React Hooks. And I think I've got a TypeScript version of this repo now, maybe. Let's see. I do. Okay. No, thank you. So if we go to our utils here, there it is. Bum-ba-da-dum. So let me grab this for you. We're on the next branch in utils. So this is the next branch is what I've been working on to get this all updated. And yeah, you've got a TypeScript version of use safe dispatch. And it's not super complicated. So we take the action. You don't have to provide this because it's inferred from the dispatch that you pass to it. And then we return a use callback that takes any number of arguments, and we're trying to recreate a function that has the same API as the dispatch that you provide. That's the idea. And so we say, hey, take the parameters of a React dispatch with that action. So whatever the parameters would be for that type of function, and that's what these args are. And then only if it's mounted, then we'll call dispatch with those args. Now, Peter happens to know that this use safe dispatch is useless. It never really solved the problem. I'm pretty sure I described that in the videos, that like it's just kind of pushing the problem aside. What we really should do is abort the request. But even then, because you can't cancel promises, you still end up continuing through the promise chain, and you still would need a use safe dispatch to get rid of the memory leak error, which is, it's not a memory leak at all. And Peter, if you want to, you can share a link to the issue that you created about that on the React repo. But
okay.
Yeah, in the future, when I upgrade all of this stuff to React 18, and then we won't need use safe dispatch. We won't even use it. We won't bother because we won't get the warning, and the warning was wrong anyway. So yeah, we'll be getting rid of use safe dispatch, but we're not on React 18 right now. So feel free to just take this and run with it if you like. So yeah, here it is. Very interesting history right here about the memory leak. It's not actually a memory leak, and it's just an annoying warning. So cool. Any other questions from folks in here?
Hey, Kent.
Hello, what's up?
Hey. I got a question, but it's not directly related to this. Can it be about anything?
Yeah, anything, sure.
Yeah, okay. So if I wanted to, start making content, right? So would your suggestion be to just make little videos about anything and just kind of put it out there just to kind of get used to recording, or like kind of focus on like one type of niche or something like from the beginning, and like, kind of just focused already, or just kind of making stuff and getting out there?
Yeah, so let's see, trying to make sure that I put myself in in your position when I say what I would do, because like what I do now, I have a lot of freedom because of where I have gotten with regard to like people who know who I am, and so they're gonna be interested in what I'm doing. To like, I guess let me first ask this: what is your goal mostly to just get good at this, or is it you want to like develop a big following and stuff like that?
Yeah, the second one.
Okay, so yeah, so I guess technically you're going to want to do both, of course, and you'll naturally get good at it the more you do it. I would say that most things you get good at them by doing them a lot, and it's easier to do it a lot if it's something that you're interested in and excited about. And you'll be better at it if you're interested and excited about it. And it'll just be more fun to do stuff that you're interested in. It shows through, like your level of interest shows through on the content that you do create. So it'll be easier, or like people will be more, yeah, just interested in what you're building. So I would suggest like identifying the stuff that you're really excited and interested about, and focus in. And I would say try to pick something like you probably have various interests. We're people, and we're not like in a box like Twitter likes to make us, you know, you're a tech person, that's all you care about, whatever.
Right.
But like you probably have varied interests, but choose one kind of it doesn't have to be a niche topic. Like you could say, I just want to talk about React or something, but like choose a particular area of that and get really good at teaching that. So if you want to be the beginner React guy, and like everybody who wants to learn React will learn from Vante, because Vante is really good at teaching beginner React concepts. Or if you want to be like accessibility with React, or accessibility with the web, you know, semantic HTML and stuff like that. But yeah, sorry, what?
Like pick a lane.
Yeah, kind of pick a lane, and you can expand from that later. So like, so some examples of lanes that I've been in. I was really into the Webpack thing. People learned Webpack from me, making Webpack configs and stuff. Boy, how boring does that sound? It was fun and interesting to me at the time. But then I also did ASTs like ESLint and Babel. Did that for a while, and people are still learning from that content that I made during that time. A long time ago, I was Angular and Forms, and authentication with JOTs and Angular. And then I also did a lot of I never did React Forms, interestingly. But what else? Oh yeah, testing, of course, got really into that. So you just kind of focus on an area so that people who are interested in that, because right now, or early on when you're getting started into this, people don't know who you are. And so what you need to do is you need to latch onto something that other people are already interested in, just intrinsically. Like, I'm interested in learning about accessibility with React. And if they find you are producing a lot of content on that, then they latch onto you. And once they latch onto you and you make your lane change to, okay, now I'm going to, in addition to all that stuff that I've got going on, I'm going to start going into animations with React or something. Then the people who latched onto you because you were accessibility with React, they're like, oh yeah, I'm actually also interested in animation. And Vante is really good at teaching the accessibility stuff. I'm going to follow him over to animation. Yeah. So, and once you get to a certain point, then you can just kind of do whatever. And people are like, well, I follow Vante. It's not just because he's doing these things, but I'm just interested in what he's doing. And so, yeah, like you kind of build up a tribe of people who are interested in what you're creating. If you were,
should it also be, could it also be like a library or something, like a certain package or something, like an animation library or something, get really good with that?
Yeah. Yep. You could be like, I teach GSAP with React, or D3, or yeah, totally. And and again, like you can think a lot of educators, I see this happen a lot where, actually we were kind of talking about it at the beginning of the stream. I saw you came after I answered this question, so you could scrub back on the recording. But I see people sometimes will put a poll on Twitter and say, what are you interested in learning next? What do you want me to teach you? And I think that this is a mistake, to let the audience control what you teach. I will sometimes post a poll like that just out of curiosity, but I already have in my mind exactly what I'm going to be teaching next. Let me say that differently. And I have been swayed by the audience before, but I think that's a mistake. It's much better to just be like, I'm interested in this, and so I'm going to teach stuff about this, and people who happen to also be interested in that will follow along. And I see sometimes educators will say, what's really hot right now? Let me go and teach that. For me, what's really hot right now is also happens to be the stuff I'm interested in teaching about, like React and that sort of thing. But you're just so much better off teaching the stuff you're really excited about rather than chasing what everybody else is excited about, I guess, is what I mean to say. So that's one reason why you won't get me teaching about GraphQL. As hot as it is and all of that, I'm just not at all interested in teaching about resolvers or even learning about that stuff. Like I have, and now, especially with Remix, where I don't need GraphQL for lots of the performance games that it promises. Now you'll never get me to teach something about GraphQL, even though it's super hot. Like people are all over that. They love it. Nope, I'm just not into it. So yeah. And also like an actual example of this, I am planning on a couple of workshops about Remix. There are so few people in the world who care about Remix right now. If I was really chasing after what's hot, then I would be teaching about Next. But I'm not interested in Next. I don't care about Next. I'm way more interested and excited about Remix. And so that's what I'm preparing my workshops on. And I feel like, especially early on in your career, if you just like teach just random stuff all over the place, what you're banking on is that people will be interested enough in you to watch all of that stuff. But early on in their career, or in your time as a content creator, you might like teach random people, but they won't connect with you because they just watched literally just one video about, the thing that they were interested in, and then they'll move on into whatever else they're interested in. They're interested in. So like, let's say, oh, I need to learn about accessibility with React, or this library. I need to learn about how to use D3 with React. They'll come across YouTube, they'll land on your video, they'll see the one video and be like, okay, that was interesting. They'll keep on looking for other D3 with React or whatever. But if you've got a bunch of stuff on that, then they'll stay with you and they'll keep watching the stuff you've got, or Tailwind or whatever it is. And they'll watch all of the stuff that you've got. And they're like, wow, Vontae's really good at this. Like, I'm really interested in the other stuff that Vontae's got. Yeah, I think all of us can relate to the blog post or the random YouTube video that we saw from some content creator we'd never heard of before. We consume that content and then we just move on, and we don't connect with that person ever again. And so, and that even happens with me, even though I am like pretty focused on certain areas. I'm sure there are like lots of people who come across my content just once and then they just move on and never come back. And that's fine too. Like, you're making the world a better place for those people, hopefully. So yeah, anyway, I can be long-winded. Sorry. Hopefully that's helpful.
It's all good. It's all good with me. Yeah, it definitely was. It definitely was. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. Tom, you asked really quick about Remix. What you're looking for is remix.run. That's what we're talking about there. Okay. Boxrun or Boxen. Hi, Kent. I think I've made that mistake before. Sorry. How would you convince someone to switch to a CSS and JS solution from SCSS? Okay, so actually, I saw my short URL for this. I think that's it. No, rats. It was like CSS and JS reason, or I can't remember. Hold on. I've got some short URLs that I don't care for people to see. So let me go look at my short URLs in a separate window here. And I will find it. There it is. It is this tweet. That I got tired of answering people's questions about, like, why is CSS and JS so great? And so this tweet is a little bit old, like 2017. So I wouldn't recommend Glamorous anymore. It's deprecated in favor of Emotion. But that is something that might help. The other thing is, I am CSS and JS is still a great solution. I don't feel bad at all suggesting it to people. But what I would actually suggest is use Remix, and then you don't need CSS and JS at all. So that would be something to consider. Look into Remix, and it eliminates the problem. Doesn't solve the problem that CSS and JS solves. It eliminates that problem, so you don't need a solution. And so, yeah, Remix is just the bomb. Okay, cool. That was the last question, I think. Any other questions before we wrap up? Yes, I did cut my hair a little too short. But I wanted my haircut to last longer. And yeah, now my hair, like, I kind of in the video, I look a little bald, like right here, but no, I'm not. There's hair right here, but it is a little short for my liking. I won't do it that short again. Okay, cool. We're gonna wrap up then. That was fun. Thanks for hanging out. This was a good time. Let's see. So yeah, what is it? Today is the 27th, and we've got, yeah, it's next week. Why am I gone? I actually don't think that September 3rd is a cancellation. I think that was a mistake. Yeah, I think I should be around next week, so I'll probably fix that, or maybe I'll forget, but you all know it should not be canceled next week. I think I'm pretty sure I'll be here. So anyway, that's it. Hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you all in the future.